Hello everyone. So our last video covered how to set up your materials in Unreal Engine, and today we're going to show you how to do it in Maya. So it's a pretty similar um, procedure, but we'll start by opening up our hypershade, this little blue ball at the top here. And so all I've got here right now is those color IDs that I made. And so we're going to hit Tab and create an AI standard surface. And so this is going to be the node we're using, or the material type that we're using, as it kind of covers all the bases for everything we possibly need. Um, and so if you'll remember, we exported our textures from Substance Painter, and we dropped them here in our source images folder. And we're going to go to, let's use the one with no ID. And yes, so we can just drag and drop all of them into our hypershade like this. And you always have to rearrange them. Maya likes to always drop them in a line like that, which personally I absolutely hate, but it is what it is. Okay, so the first thing that we want to look at here is these place 2D texture nodes. And so if you look in the property editor on the right, you can see like this repeat UV value. So these nodes are for adjusting the tiling of your material. So for a bespoke texture like this, we don't want to adjust the tiling at all. But if we were using a tiling texture, we can use these nodes to, adjust how many of them are tiling up. Um, One thing you want to do when using a tiling texture is, so if I changed the UV repeat on this, so you can see we have 2 by 2 now, it doesn't change it for every other map. So I'm going to set that back to 1 by 1. And so we're going to actually use just one of these nodes for all of our texture maps here. So I'm just going to delete those ones. And so in order to connect them, use the middle mouse button, or wait, sorry, Control and middle mouse button. And then we just go from the orange dot to the white dot, which turns orange. And so by holding Control, this copies all of the outputs. If you see there's these little symbols here, these like 3 bars, you can hit those to expand what's all in this node. And so yeah, rather than like running each of these over to connect them all properly, or individually, you can just hold Control and middle mouse click on that orange dot. It'll copy all of them. So now for our maps here. So one thing to keep in mind is Maya doesn't automatically bring these in with the best color space. So for AO, for instance, if you click on your material node in the property editor on the right side, you can go down and you see color space right here. And so we're going to change that. If you go to utility, we're going to change it to raw. And you can see how it changed there. For our base color, we want to leave on sRGB. But for everything else, we want to convert that to raw. And it's a good idea to get in the habit of doing this immediately when you bring in your maps, because honestly, I've done it many times and like been building a material and then why doesn't it look right? And yeah, I totally forgot to change those. Okay, so another neat little thing is if you click on this little S icon here, it will always show you the map up here of what your actual texture is going to be. Which, when you click on these nodes, that's what you get anyway, but we're going to add some customization nodes in the middle. Um, yeah, and so it'll those will kind of hide our materials unless we use that little S. So first thing is for our ambient occlusion. You'll notice on the standards AI standard surface, there is no plugin for ambient occlusion. So Maya has to use a layered texture node. Oops, that reminds me, I should rename my material. And you don't need to use the underscores in Maya, but I kind of got into the habit of it with Unreal Engine, and so I just carry it over to everything now. So we're going to hit Tab, and we're looking for layered texture. And so this one is a little bit weird. So you can see this little green square here. If we click here, we'll add another one, which we're going to need two. So this kind of works like a blend node in Substance Designer, or like a blend mode in Photoshop. So we're going to middle mouse click and drag our ambient occlusion to this color bar, not to this. If we drag it here, it'll end up creating a new texture layer. And then we're going to select the second one. You can just click here to make new nodes. And so we're going to get the second one selected, and then middle click and drag our base color onto that. And so now if we switch over to this, we can see exactly what we're looking at. And I'm going to switch this. We want to leave it on over and then just bring it down. So additionally, you can use multiply, which I kind of prefer, but I was always told you're supposed to use over, which I find just kind of washes out your colors. And I'm going to leave it around the 0.75 mark. I think looks good. And so from here, we don't want to plug right into our material yet, because we want to have some form of control over our textures. So the same as with Unreal, anytime, like Maya and Substance Painter and Unreal all use different renderers. So if we go straight from Substance Painter to Maya, it's not going to look the exact same as it did in Substance Painter. That's why we need to add these extra nodes to adjust things. Actually, additionally, there is a plugin for Substance Painter to Maya that just automatically exports your textures and builds the material for you. Do not use that plugin if you don't know how to build the materials manually, because I've met so many people have been having trouble with their scenes and stuff not looking properly, and it's 90% of the time it ends up being that they used that plugin and something went wrong and they needed to adjust something, but they didn't know how. And so looking at the hypershade doesn't help them at all. So yeah, just don't use that it can save you time if you already know how to build your texture. If you don't know how to build textures like this, don't use the plugin until you're comfortable with it and understand what all these different nodes do. So sorry, that's my little rant about that plugin that I absolutely hate. I would much rather build them by hand. So let's go. We're going to bring in an AI color correct. And from here, we're going to go from our out color to our input, and then our out color to our base color. And one thing you'll notice, actually, let me just minimize this. If I throw my barrel material on here, and then So if you notice on my little shader ball, this all looks black. That is because of this AI color correct node. It hides your materials in the displays. Um, it's perfectly fine. Like it does that every single time you make a material. So don't worry too much about this going black. And then, so that's our layered texture, which we can minimize. We don't need that to be big anymore. And our color correct node. And so you'll notice if you click on this one, over on the right here in your properties, you get things like gamma, hue shift, saturation, contrast. And so why are you not displaying properly? You can use these to adjust your material, like exposure and contrast and stuff like that, as you're going into, or once you're in your scene. So very much the same as like the hue shift that we made in Unreal Engine. Yeah, same kind of concept there. And then next we've got our metallic. And for any of your gray maps, you can use this remap HSV. And so you'll notice on the right, this gives you kind of a graph. And so since it's a gray map, we'll never use the hue or the saturation. We'll only ever use the value. And we'll also keep in mind that, so we go from the out color to in color, but going from the remap HSV to our material node, we want to open this up. And remember, our metallic map is only grayscale. So we want to, and any grayscale information is going to be stored on the red channel. So we're just going to use the out from the red channel and then plug that into our metalness. So we can see up there. Metalness isn't something we're going to have to adjust often. I just like to put this node on there just in case we need it. And then we bring in another remap HSV for using with our roughness. Make sure you're grabbing the out color and not the out alpha. And then again, our roughness is another gray map, so we're going to go out from the red channel and plug that into the specular roughness. So, and again, in this map, you can see, our roughness map here, and we've got this graph on the value, which you'll notice works a lot like a levels node in Substance Painter. So we can kind of use that to adjust, how our roughness comes in. You can even add multiple things and really customize exactly what you want. Every time you click on the line, it creates a new little node. You can just click the little X box underneath that node to delete it. There we go. And so I'm just going to leave that at default for now. And then our last map is our normal, which it has to run through this AI normal map node. That plugin I was talking about, instead of using AI normal map, it always uses a bump 2D node, which isn't how we do it anymore. Maya's had some updates and the plugin hasn't kept up. So our normal is a color map, so we're just going to pull straight from the out color. But we want to make sure we go into the input, not into the normal. Feeding into this normal plugin will kind of totally mess things up on you. It won't read out properly. And then for out value to normal. And so I'm going to save this. And this is basically all that you need to set up your materials in Maya. So you can see that we're still using modifier nodes just like in Unreal. It's kind of the same principle. It just uses, some different nodes. And I've just got to even things out a bit more so that I don't go crazy. Additionally, you'll notice in the normal map node that we added, this AI normal map, in our properties, we've got a strength value. And that strength value will control how strong our normals are when we're rendering, at least. So we're good here, and we're just going to make this smaller, and I'm going to slide you off screen for now. And so as you can see, in our viewport, we're not actually seeing our proper textures. Again, that's because of the AI color correct. So I'm going to go to Arnold and open our Arnold render view here. Oops, I'm not going to do that. I do not have any lights in my scene. So Arnold won't show you anything if you don't have lights. So let's go Arnold lights, and we'll create a sky dome light. Came in really small. Let's make that big. And so with our sky dome light, if we go into the attribute editor, we can change the color and intensity. I'm just going to leave these at 1 for now. And I'm going to do another video that kind of explains a bit more of this lighting and rendering stuff. But we do need to actually have lights in the scene in order to be able to see our object. Okay. Now we'll open up our render view. And we'll take a look. You know what? I think I may have misspoken. Anytime you change your settings for your material, you always want to make sure you stop your display first. Okay. Particularly if you're using things like displacement or adjusting your normal maps. I'm just going to tweak the height here a bit. So, or sorry, not the height, the roughness here a bit. So once you get them set up, there's definitely a little bit of kind of tweaking things here and there. Oh, that's why. There we go. I accidentally left my gamma setting way up. That's why it looked all washed out and funny. Let me just make sure that's on raw. There we go. Okay, there we go. Much better. So now our barrel is looking almost exactly like it did in Substance. So, we can tweak our normal map here. Let's bring it up a little bit. There we go. That's bringing out some more of the detail. I think 2 looks better. Hit the little S, and we can see our map up here. It also displays it on the object, but that's not super useful most of the time, unfortunately. Not for myself, at least. And so remember that the so black is smooth, um, or sorry, is rather slick and smooth. Or if I mixed it up because Maya and Unreal are backwards. Yeah, white is rough, and then black is smooth. So I can just tweak a little bit of how we have our roughness map. We shouldn't need to tweak our metalness. We can adjust our saturation and contrast if we want. These sliders are pretty big, but really you're going to be entering numbers most of the time. And we can turn up the exposure if we need. Just a little bit. And so everything's going to involve, a little bit of tweaking like this. We can go back into our layered texture node and adjust how much of our ambient occlusion is coming in. So you can see that's with it off, and then that's with it maxed out. So it really makes our kind of our grooves and our shadows show up a lot more. And that is it for the basics of setting up your materials in Maya. I'm going to show you another thing now as well that uses a height map. And I'm going to show you displacement, which is great for creating shape when there is none. So let me just give me 2 seconds to set that up, and we'll be right back. Okay, so now we're going to show how displacement works. So I've just brought in a cylinder here and added very few subdivisions to it. And then I've unfolded it in the UVs. And so for displacement, what this does is it reads a height map and allows it to make it look like we have more geometry than we actually do. So I've already got this all set up, and so you can see, our flat cylinder has all this actual depth to it. Um, and so this is a material that I made in Substance Designer, which if you want to get into texturing, learn Substance Designer. It is amazing. But let's stop this and we'll show you how we did it. I'll just close that for now. And so I'll bring up our hypershade, and you can see this material is the same as the other one. I've set it all up the same. The big difference is this one doesn't have a metallic map, and it has a height map here. And so in order to set up our displacement, we just bring in one of these displacement shaders. So I'll actually just delete this one for now. And displacement shader. And so it comes with this extra shader node, but we've already got this one that for the rest of our material. So we're just going to delete the one that it comes with. And so again, our height map is a grayscale map. And again, make sure you've got the color space set to raw. And I've hooked up another of the remap HSV, and so we can use that to adjust. Why are you not adjusting? That is peculiar. Because I was on the wrong node, that's why. There we go. And so we can use that to adjust our height map. And so with the height map, white is the highest point and black is the lowest point. And I'm actually just going to tweak it just a little bit. And that'll be good. And so we're going to go from our height map, take the color node into our remap, same as we did with our roughness and our metallic on our other material. And then, because our height map is a grayscale, we're going to take out of the red channel. Grayscale is always in the red channel in Maya. And plug it into our displacement node here. And then we go from the out on the displacement node up to our displacement shader. And so one thing you want to make sure with the displacement node is you'll see the scale here. We're going to have to change this. I'll leave it at 1 for now, just so that you guys can see the effects that it has. And I'll hit save. And so if we go back and, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. And so because we have a low poly object that we're trying to make appear high poly, we have to change a few settings. So if we go to our attribute editor and I go to the polycylinder shape, one of your settings boxes is for Arnold. So we open this one and then we go down to the subdivisions. And we have to change our type. So it'll start off with none. So we want to change our type to Cat Clark, which is a weird name, but it was actually named after the creator of this method. So, and then we change our iterations. You can change depending on how much detail you want. I find 3 is pretty good. And then our adaptive metric, we change to edge length. And so this will allow it so that when we render, it will look like there is a lot more geometry and a lot more subdivision to this object. Additionally, if you have a very high poly object, you don't need to do this. So if I'd smoothed this, something with like this type of poly count doesn't need to, you don't need to use those Cat Clark settings and those subdivision settings. But that also kind of defeats the purpose of using displacement. And so now that we've got our settings on our subdivision are done and we've got our height map plugged in, we're going to go into Arnold and open the Arnold render view. And perfect. So this looks like an absolute mess. It is entirely because of the scale setting on our height. So I'm going to stop the render. One thing you want to make sure is if you're adjusting settings on your height map or in your hypershade, always stop your render before you adjust any of those settings, because it will cause this to go. It will react in some unpredictable and weird ways. Sometimes it won't render. Sometimes you'll have to close this like completely and then reopen it and then it'll render. I've had times where I've had to like save everything, completely shut down Maya and reopen it and then it'll render again. So always make sure that you've hit stop before you start changing any of your material settings when you're using something that has displacement. Um, and so in our hypershade, if we go to our displacement shader, it's got this scale here. And this is way too high. I'm going to knock this down to 0.5. And we'll see. I might have to go as low as 0.1. But we adjust it. Make sure we save. Yeah, our 0.5 is still too high. So go back. Let's try it at 0.1. Save it again. That's actually a little bit too low. Stop. 0.25. There we go. And so now we can see we've got all this extra depth, but our cylinder is still flat. There, it's done nothing on this. So I use a cylinder here. Any textures that I make, I generally prefer to use a cylinder. You can use a sphere if you would like. I just personally don't like the way it pinches at the top, so anytime I'm trying to do something to show off my materials, I normally use a rounded cylinder. But just to demonstrate, apply our material. Bring back, oh, why do you save them? Bring back our render view. Yeah, okay, so we've adjusted things, so now we've got to close that. Oh, and you can see this is perfectly flat. So the only depth you're seeing from this right now is from the normal map, because I forgot to change our subdivision settings. So go to Cat Clark, 3 iterations, and set that to edge length. Now, there we go. And as you can see, it depends on the object you're using as to what you want the scale on that to be set at. And you notice there that the whole ball kind of swelled up, which is something that you really want to be aware of when using displacement, because if you have like a model next to this one, and we hit play, this displacements can totally, override and envelop your other models or other things in the scene. Now I've put these on a sphere and a cylinder, but the best use for something like displacement is, well, it works great on bricks and stuff, but to throw it on a plane. And again, change our settings. I'm not even going to cut this down even more. And helps if I apply the material. So you can have just this simple flat plane and make it into a walkway or the ground around a villa, something like that. You've got no geometry, basically. It's as flat as can be. As you can even stop this. And I play again, and so you can see how having no subdivisions does change it, but at the same time, sorry, I'm getting a bit too close there. There is still a little bit of depth, and again, that's just a matter of adjusting our scale. Let's stop. Put our scale here, save, and then we render again. And you can see it kind of moved the object as the scale. So having my plane right now has no subdivisions, so I would really recommend having at least a couple, just so it has something to work from. And why those edges went super weird like that, I don't know. That is weird. Additionally, I changed the the tiling on this material, which I forgot to mention there. So by going to this first node that we created, or that we linked to all the other things, we can change our tiling here. Yep, now we've got a lot bigger rocks. Change it to so you do have to kind of tweak it and adjust it, maybe even balance out the height map a bit more for this one. But if you're trying to, show off your texturing skills, especially for Substance Designer, this works absolutely great. I didn't show you guys displacement in Unreal in our last video because it works a bit differently and it doesn't work quite the same. So it's something I've only got like a bare minimum of experience with, and so if something went wrong, I can't really explain how to fix it. And you'll notice here, my UVs, see how weird this looks? And so that's because I've changed this tiling a bunch and not closed my render view. This is what I was talking about before, about how it can make things look a bit weird. And there we go, now we're fixed again. And so that's, I think, all I need to show you for setting up your textures. Go ahead. That's for the sky dome light. Yeah, so drag in your maps, ambient occlusion and base color, get the layered texture node first, and then the color map gets the AI color, and then that goes to the AI color correct. Metallic and roughness are grayscale maps, so they get the remap HSV, just like the height map down here is a grayscale, so it goes to the remap HSV as well. And then your normal map goes to an AI normal map node. if you see something that has bump 2D or AI bump 2D, it's using the wrong methods. That used to be something that they used, but as Maya has changed, this AI normal map node has kind of come in to replace that. And yeah, so that is it for texturing and building your textures in Maya. Um, Hopefully this is helpful, the displacement. When I discovered this, I thought it was really cool. I've used it in a few scenes myself. If you watch my demo reel, you'll notice the Aztec scene. The ground has some like dirt texture around, and then like a series of these cobblestones, which I just used a flat plane and laid it onto the ground. And so you can see those in there. Um, But that is it for this video. So hopefully that's everything you guys need to get your textures all built. Someone requested that I do a lighting and rendering demo. So that will be my next video, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you.